Welcome, everybody, to the Loud and Drunk podcast. This is Dan. We are talking about what you guys want us to talk about. We put out a short a little bit ago of the zombie apocalypse versus the robot uprising, and that kind of took off. And you guys hit us up with a lot of questions and comments, so we figure we'll pick some of the best ones, and we'll go through it in a little bit more detail, because as some of us said in that Would You Rather episode, we've actually thought a lot about this.
Well, it's funny. So, like, we had our opinions about it, but, like, we were not expecting the reaction to it at all.
Justin, I did not expect that at all. So there's a lot of times where I make a short and it goes out into the ether, and I'm like, man, that was funny. Why didn't that take off? And then that one took off, and I'm like, oh, wow.
That one kind of pantsed us a little bit.
It was also like, because the way YouTube works is that, like, you put something out into the ether and you figure after the first hour it's dead in the water.
Well, we are here at LND Media, Loud and Drunk. We are used to just YouTube just stomping on our nuts.
Yes. And so when that took off, a couple days later, I was like, okay. A lot of the people who commented had some pretty insightful things to say.
Legitimate questions that need to be answered.
You're exactly right, Moses. And we're also joined by
Isaac Asimov. Very nice to be here.
Okay.
What a pleasure.
I was hoping for Douglas Adams.
I mean, listen, we will still get Douglas Adams, but Isaac Asimov, thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, I don't know why all the fanfare, but I'm just happy to be here.
Just really appreciate
Yeah.
what you do.
I thank you. I appreciate what I do as well.
That is very
clear in your writing.
It's very spot on. I've read a book or two.
But before we get started, I want to encourage you out there, if you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, then make sure that you have. Also, we're on Rumble. Make sure that you hit the notification bell if you subscribe to us on YouTube. We're also on Spotify, Apple, everywhere you get your podcasts. And our home base is loudanddrunk.com, and we want you to make that your home base. So bookmark that today. All right, guys, let's get into this. The robot apocalypse versus the zombie apocalypse.
It's so funny. This was a little dribble of a would you rather.
Yeah.
People want to hear like fleshed out opinions on this.
Yeah, a lot of people that were criticizing us kind of used Resident Evil as a basis.
One of the classics.
Yeah. It's one of the classics.
I didn't hate it at all. I think it was very good.
That dog scares me to this day.
Yeah, we got accused of never having played Resident Evil.
I'm like, hilarious.
That was like the first PlayStation game I ever played. I played it in my stepsister's room.
I feel like we were playing it before many of the critics were even born.
I think we have
that might be a bit true, but
I think we kind of have to say, so we are existing here in like the podcast sphere. We are elder. Yeah. We may not be around here for the full podcast.
Are we consider elder like
for video games?
Well, for video,
you were born in like 72.
I know, before video games. We used to call them Nickelodeons.
So my first system was a Sega Master System.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
My family did not want to buy the NES. You guys had, Mario Brothers. I had Wonder Boy.
Well, I had the Atari, what was it, 5200 or whatever it was called?
Yes, yeah. But
that was the first, that's what I had when.
Whatever the actual model is, the one that was like wood panel.
So
and it's hard to quantify. I had
like late 70s kind of console.
When everything had wood paneling, basically. Like your refrigerator had wood paneling.
Honestly, the whole goddamn house was wood paneling.
I'm admitting I was born in 85. We didn't have a lot of money. ColecoVision.
Oh, yeah.
We had one of those, which was this big beige thing that had 2 dials on it.
It was like playing Pong at this, against yourself.
Well, it had like 5 games, and every game was Pong.
Yeah.
It was 2 dials, and it hooked up with an RHF adapter.
Yeah. Oh, fuck.
Yeah. You had to screw that thing onto the coaxial cable.
I remember
so
that.
long.
Yeah.
But the question I actually kind of want to get into, because the basis of any zombie apocalypse is, the first thing is, how does it actually spread? Now, in most media, it's spread through being bit, and in some cases,
like a virus or something.
It's a virus, but it's passed through like the saliva or something like that.
It's like crazy rabies.
But I think that's 2 different questions, because one is how is it passed, and one, where does it come from? Like what?
Well, those are
like,
definitely
where's the
different
patience?
So
Zero.
I'll chime in if I may. I know a little
Absolutely.
bit about the history of zombieism and basically in cinema and to a degree in video games, which obviously
Well,
mirrored
I
cinema.
think, especially in media,
Yeah.
it definitely has a
I think that one of the interesting things when you're looking at the way in which zombieism is depicted is that when you look at it from my earliest like knowledge of it goes back to the original films. That's if we leave out, like the history of zombieism and the concepts of it that go back to like voodoo culture and like Bantu tribalism in Africa and such like that.
Bantu, hoodoo, voodoo,
exactly.
all these.
So if we just bring it back to like early cinema, and this is something that I find very interesting about zombieism is that what caused zombieism and how it spread, because the two things almost always went together, which also makes sense.
Typically.
It would tie in with what the population, if you were talking about basically the American audience, because that's obviously, who movies were being made for the longest time, it would tie in with what people were afraid of at that time. So the earliest zombie films, I'm talking about like White Zombie and things like that, it would very often be voodoo and like black people, essentially, like tribes and other religions and things like that. And
it's also voodoo at its worst interpretation.
Well, yeah. Well, that's kind of what I mean, though. It's that those original films, those original depictions were highly xenophobic. They essentially were more or less like something that related to this concept of like fearing people who were darker than you, people who...
The obvious other.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The obvious
Anything
other.
different.
Yeah. And then you had an evolution from that. And this is where we get into where people begin to, like people who are like even a little bit into it. You get the original Night of the Living Dead, the very first Romero film, the black and white classic where they're holed up in a house, which was, it was certainly like a commentary on culture of America at the time, presumably the whole world. But that was actually caused by a comet, which most people forget.
Yes. No one remembers that.
Yeah, and it correlates with like other films like Night of the Comet and things of that sort. So it was basically this idea that like a comet went overhead and in some way caused this to happen. And that was like a time period where that was beginning to enter, it was a space age. And people were becoming aware of like that comets could come here and like kill us, essentially, an asteroid impact.
It also correlates with the understanding of how rabies worked.
Yeah, that happened a little bit later. Because certainly today, if you look at like zombieism, then you could see the parallels there. But there was even after the comet thing, there was a big time period in the 60s and 70s where zombieism was caused by nuclear energy.
Oh, nuclear energy?
Yeah. And because that's what people...
It was a warning
new.
against what was going on.
It was new and scary for people. And so it was very easy for you as a director, as a writer to latch onto that and say like, what if this happened because of that? And now we see how today, when you look at zombieism, it's very much so a biological thing.
Neopriism.
Exactly. We
but
all
at the
live
same
through
point,
COVID.
making it acceptable. Like
it makes it more
kind of
relatable.
like
If you say
the edge off it.
If you say to somebody today that a comet or an asteroid caused people to become zombies, even your dumbest person is going to be like, well, that just sounds stupid.
Yeah.
Because
but
it
that's
just doesn't,
what it was.
Yeah, it just doesn't register with what they understand. And I would say rightfully so. But if you say to somebody like a virus can do this, well, then they're like, oh my God, because we all live in this age where it's like none of us understand
it's just
viruses.
a proxy to make it relatable to the media.
Yeah. Well, not to the media, but to the people.
Some of the older zombie movies, you can actually tell me which movie this is because I don't remember what it is, but one of them was like hell was full. So now,
so that's a classical, like that's the trope of so George A. Romero is like the godfather of zombie movies. So he did Night of the Living Dead.
And I think it's fair and also not fair in certain ways.
I mean, certainly there's other people. You've got like a lot of directors out of like Italy. That was a big place for it. So like I'm a big fan of Fulci, who did the original zombie movie.
Yeah.
I personally he's one of my favorites. And
Dead Alive is one of my favorites.
Dead Alive's phenomenal. Oh my God. But yeah, with Romero, he was the one to kind of pitch that where he didn't want to tell you what caused zombieism. Instead, he just throws you into it. And that's the other interesting thing about Romero is that unlike a lot of these other directors, he wasn't just giving you a zombie movie. All of his zombie movies were commentaries on what was happening today, even more so than just like applying that fear of like nuclear energy or asteroids or this or that.
He did a really good job for like 20 years.
Yeah. But he was directly commenting on the political atmosphere in this country. And if you watch his films, then you'll see that most of what he was commenting on was race relations in the United States and in many other places as well. But I mean, he was very strongly commenting on the role of black people, of the civil rights movement. I think of pretty much every minority, but he focused on those since they were the focus at the time.
And he did a great job of it.
Yeah. And his commentary, and that was in every one of his films for the most part. It was, and in Dawn of the Dead, it was when it was most iconic because our main character, his name was Peter. He's directly asked, like, what do you think is causing this? And he says, I have no idea, but I believe it was his grandfather, maybe his uncle, that he mentions. He was like, well, he was into voodoo, and he told me that when hell is full, the dead will walk the earth.
Yep.
But this was said in all of the Romero films, of which I think there's there's 3 good ones. But I think there's like 5 or 6 that are like actually like considered to be his. And that was almost like, I think it's a great cop out, but it's basically a cop out. It's a way of not answering the question in an empirical way and instead just saying like, there's zombies here. And that allowed him to not focus on the why or the how, and instead to focus on what he was really talking about, which is how people interact with each other in a scary situation.
I
when
would
society
venture to
collapses,
say
how do we act?
I am fully backing what you're saying. I feel like he even gave away a little too much.
Yeah, he made it pretty on the nose, I think.
Yeah.
It was very blatant.
Yeah. When he was making these films, though, I mean, certainly the original Night of the Living Dead, I mean, when he did that, the original ending to it, like the first one, the black and white, it's been out for, we're going on about it, like 80 years, something like that. So, like, no spoiler alerts here. But the finale to that, we've got a black man who survives, and more or less like everybody else, to some degree or another, has been wiped out. The movie dealt with these issues and what have you. And then the movie ends with him like dying nonetheless. Yep. And it's very much so a dead on a spotlight on the issue of like, more or less like this black man dies and it's like, did he die because he became a zombie? He ends up getting shot.
Yeah. But
did they think he was a zombie or did they kill him because he was black? And it's left open-ended.
It's Romero at his best because it's like the open-ended question. It's like, what is ultimately lost?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But story is told, but what do you take away from that? What do you, the observer, take away from this?
And that's what I love about that ending is that you really don't know. You could watch that movie a million times, and I have, but it's like you watch the end of that and you really don't know. Like it's meant to be open-ended in that way. And even that character, if you were to hypothetically pose the question to him, I think that it's strongly implied that he wouldn't know either. There is
not
no
really
answer
his decision to make.
Right. Yeah. You're just kind of left to think about. And that's what's so interesting about it. It's that it's the fact that you're living in this zombie apocalypse. And even still, Romero is drawing your attention to the idea that despite this is happening, maybe this guy still got shot because he was black. And that's incredible when you think about the heavy content of this. Humanity's been wiped out, but is there still racism at this core? And that's something that he really he did that more than many other directors, I think, who did the same type of zombie
It
thing.
tugs away and like giving you hope, or you like believing
I wouldn't
in hope.
even. I think I know where you're coming from, but it's
like you hope that he was shot because
hope.
he's a zombie, but
it's more or less
just because of day to day that they probably shot him because he's black.
Let me reel this in because we're getting in the weeds.
We are getting in the weeds
in terms of the background. So let's actually rephrase this because people were curious, like, well, can a mosquito infect you with the zombie virus?
Sure.
And so, like, let's craft a kind of like worst case scenario zombie apocalypse because we're kind of contrasting the zombie apocalypse versus a machine uprising. Yeah. Which we all like our presuppositions were all that the zombie apocalypse was beneficial.
This is Dan. This is why you are so necessary.
Like not beneficial, but it was the better of the two options. Like we said that it was a zombie apocalypse is actually technically winnable. Like you could, in most cases, like The Walking Dead, they're actually winning that zombie apocalypse. It's actually like the humans that are.
Yes, and this is. I'm just gonna reaffirm my opinion on this. Yeah, like the zombie apocalypse, you're dealing with an ultimate entity, but like not.
It's more tangible than an AI. Like
the way I'm trying to explain this is that like. It's a dumb mass type thing.
It's like, and it also depends largely on the type of zombie, how it's spread.
Oh, yeah. So, are we doing with runners? Are we dealing with fucking blah, blah, blah?
So,
whatever.
like, the worst case scenario in I don't know, maybe this is not right, but like the worst case scenario to me would actually be a little bit more akin to, let's just say, The Last of Us. Because there's no way to actually cure
the cordyceps.
It's the cordyceps.
Yeah.
So and then it's become something that you can just breathe in.
And
you
those
might not even be able to notice.
That's true, but there was also different types of them.
Yes, absolutely.
Like they ran the gamut of like the
bloaters,
flickers.
I think they also tried to play that as like a level of time and exposure type thing.
There's another element here that I didn't hear you mention, Dana, on the note of like how is it caused in something like half of the entirety of the zombie genre, you didn't need to necessarily catch it. It's that when you died by any means, you came back as a zombie.
That's the Walking Dead's like big thing.
That is their modus operandi.
You didn't always need
they're
to
happening.
Like
it's
the happening. Which
is kind of that. There's no rhyme or reason to it.
It's interesting because there's so many branches to follow.
But the thing with if you die, you just automatically you're already infected, and once you die, you just get it, or you just come back as a zombie. That's easily plannable.
Yes,
you're just all right. He's about to die. Let's just park here with a freaking rifle and blow his brains out as soon as
it's one of those things.
Or let him go. Whatever,
destroy the body. Somebody dies, destroy the body,
and that also depends on like the stage at which you become aware of this. Because if you look at these films, rarely are you jumping in like when it's like fully well developed. Yeah. Like you're usually still when you jump into these films.
That one zombie was born a baby.
Oh, yeah. The Dawn of the Dead remake.
You're not wrong.
But it's that one of the things, and again, it's that like Ramiro was great at this, talking about the humanism of the people who were involved.
Ramiro's thing was you're experiencing the first like 48 hours. No one knows dick about fuck.
Yeah. And even when it was like, because they did do like with Day of the Dead. That took place, like it's implied, like it's at least months after this happened. So there are exceptions. But that's because they were already living in an underground bunker and like all these things. Yeah. But on the note of like planning for it, that's true when you are aware. Yeah. But it's not true. And you did see this done, even though I'm not like I enjoy the film for what it is, but I'm not going to call it a great zombie movie. But the remake of Dawn of the Dead, 2004, if I'm not mistaken, with that, you got to see a little bit of that where basically it's like we know that they're going to turn into a zombie when they die, but you're also dealing with like the mother or the child. And they're like, well, I don't believe that. Because I don't want to believe that. And now you're waiting, and now there's a zombie there, and you don't have a gun. So the time to have done it was 20 minutes ago, but now it's too late.
And that's also another thing that we can contrast, too. With the zombie apocalypse, you don't necessarily need a gun if you got like a knife or a machete or just a pointy fucking stick. Because in the most cases, zombies are just, as you had phrased it before, shitty people. Yeah. So you can just like push them over and they're practically done for.
You actually brought up a very good point. So like you have the movies where it's like somebody flips a switch, zombie apocalypse.
Yeah.
And everybody's trying to figure out what no one knows, but everybody's trying to figure out what's going on.
That's your Dawn of the Dead remake.
Your Dawn of the Dead. And like the one I always sing the praises of, Dead Alive. Yeah. It's like a very insular into this house situation. Which is I think it's an interesting type of thing, and it's not too dissimilar from what he's saying, but like it's a very isolated. I kick ass for the Lord.
And it's like the complete polar opposite of the Dawn of the Dead.
But at the same time, that like isolated scenario, even that's like a callback to the original, the Night of the Living Dead, where you're just all stuck in this farmhouse kind of scenario.
So, what do you guys think is the worst possible way for this zombie for zombieism to pass from a person to person, or not necessarily a person to person? Maybe it is mosquitoes or whatever, the ticks or whatever. So I would have been a zombie twice already tonight. If mosquitoes.
If we're doing mosquitoes, I'm done for.
Yeah.
What I would say, so like in modern media, I think especially in like I haven't followed up, but I'm very aware of it. The Walking Dead series and all of its spinoffs. Like they let off with like, you got bit, whatever you turned, but then it just turned out that if you died, you turned.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of, so it's like a broad exposure thing that everybody's exposed. And I think that's kind of what they tried to vaguely illustrate. Like I said, I haven't watched any of these.
Well, I read that. I read the graphic novels, the comics, whatever.
Well, I read the graphic novels, but all that shit got.
That guy.
But it also like the whole point too.
Daryl
like,
Dixon now.
As the point that you were making, once you get out of that initial rush, the shock, that like the zombie, that there are zombies and they're biting people and you're turning into a zombie and all of that, it's the more manageable thing to kind of conquer. Because as long as you...
it seems like a protocol thing at that time.
Yeah. You just like, all right.
You just go back to basics.
Yeah, you go back to basics, learn, like, if you don't know how to farm, make friends with somebody who does.
Yeah.
Like, know somebody that knows...
Walking Dead taught us that.
Yeah.
A lot about
that's what
farming.
we're talking about, but like,
An entire second season of
under that protocol, it's just like somebody dies, you burn them immediately.
Yeah.
It's like,
or it's just like, separate head from the rest of the body, which is typically the way that a zombie dies. I don't know how many other zombie movies there are that are like, oh, the head is removed and it's still
so usually the way in which that was done is that like the zombie movies that are considered good, both old and like relatively modern, zombies can be killed by things that would normally completely kill a regular human being. Yeah. So the headshot is like, that's obviously the thing.
It's primary.
In theory,
the brain is what makes anybody go.
It's still because you still need these parts to do it. You know,
you need some kind of electrical
the body can be rotted away,
make it go.
So there are zombie films where like just causing enough damage to the body that the zombies, if like obviously if
non-functional,
if you riddle a person with bullets, like it doesn't matter like how much fucking meth
the muscles are not connected anymore.
I don't care how Florida they are.
There are exceptions to that, but they're kind of considered to be a little bit more comedic. If they didn't think of themselves that way. But like if you look at the Return of the Dead series, so like Return of the Living Dead and so on and so forth, with those, that's the series. And many people have seen those because they're classics, but they're, again, more comedic. In those, you would have zombies in barrels that the government has stored.
Yeah.
And then when you go to like burn the body, like that goes up into the atmosphere and brings all of the dead in the cemeteries back to life.
Rain.
And there's no way to destroy the zombies. They're just like infinite, you know? They just live for eternity kind of thing. And that's why it's kind of comedic.
Can we play around?
I love that one.
We've been dealing a lot with like the Walking Dead style zombies. Style.
This is actually what I was going to go with too, because we kind of already kind of dissect that like, all right, you're automatically coming back as a zombie. So that's probably like one of those worst case scenarios. I would disagree. I think airborne pathogen is a little bit worse because you just breathe and all of a sudden you're a fucking
that's
zombie.
what I do enjoy about like Last of Us, where it's like Mother Earth, taking it back, and
the last is the cordyceps.
Yeah, it's the cordyceps. Like it's just all mushrooms and shit, and
it's a fungal infection.
Yeah, it's a fungal infection, which is
like kind of just me. For the best of my knowledge is that it just happens.
Yeah,
like
but it's an evolution basically.
It's evolutionary. It might have had something to do with people, but
a type
it's
of
just
fungi.
like that's what made it thrive. Was just us.
It's
being
a type
people.
of fungi that uses like an organism to pass itself on. It does that with
that's
ants.
literally what the real cordyceps does.
Yeah, that's exactly what that mushroom does.
That game made me look up what
cordyceps,
that was. I was just like, and to me, that's actually more intriguing, just because one, that the whole thesis of that story was that like, oh, we're going to like make a vaccine based on like what the
girl Ellie.
Ellie.
Totally.
Yeah, she was just immune, and like that would like it was like what's that movie?
At
Michael
least
Caine
one
is
context
in it,
clue.
and he's
Batman.
No, when he's the hippie.
Wow.
Thanks.
Wow. Okay.
Was it on the not on the road?
It was a hippie.
Not on the road. The fuck is it
You were
called?
only supposed to blow the bloody dolls off.
It's a graphic novel. I can't think of the goddamn name of it.
The Road?
No.
Was it The Road? Batman?
Or was it The Road?
Maybe it was The Road.
Was it Austin Powers 3?
Gold member. Okay,
no, it
makes sense.
It was Austin Powers 2.
Oh, okay.
Or maybe Shrek.
All right, so...
But the differentiation between, because we call a little bit of, we got to comment on this. It was said in that Would You Rather, there are two different types of zombies. You got the walkers and you got the runners.
Right.
But then we got the pushback that there's crawlers.
Right. That's a video game thing. For
sure.
Yeah. That's like a Resident Evil thing.
Yeah.
But isn't that the same as a walker?
I would say that that's pretty much
like
the same thing.
It's a subset of the walker.
Yeah.
What we're talking about is speed.
Yeah.
My opinion is, what we would quantify as the walker is the slow, rambling type of zombie.
Yeah. Their strength comes in numbers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then you have the 28 Days Later type.
The original Dawn of the Dead versus the remake of Dawn of the Dead.
Exactly. You have the Twitch type zombies that fly off.
Yeah.
And those are two very different things.
Yeah. Yeah, that correlates back to the concept of as I just mentioned, it's the quantity of zombies being the danger. If you read like what was it called? I think it was the original book.
Yes.
You've got the Zombie Survival Guide.
Yeah.
Albert Brooks.
Yeah.
And then World War Z, even better movie.
That made me not like the book, and I didn't like
which
the book.
is a shame because the book was great.
Well, because it's funny because
it was written like a
Brooks
textbook.
wrote the Zombie Survival Guide.
That was great.
Which is a great little piece. It's fucking hilarious. Just read it for what it is.
Yeah.
But then the World War Z thing.
Yeah.
And then
World War Z was, I very much so enjoyed that book because it was a series of
I enjoyed
first-person accounts.
the book.
Yeah. The movie had nothing
The movie had nothing to do with the book.
It was can we just do
Brad
this whole
Pitt was in
podcast
it, yeah.
about the movie World War Z?
No, that could be a different one. We have to move on to robot apocalypse at some
Oh
point.
my God.
yeah.
All I want to say then about it is that Brad Pitt was the greatest human who ever lived in that.
Yeah, that is the
He
thesis
was
of that movie.
He
the
could do
world's
everything,
greatest-
but did nothing.
the world's greatest virologist. He happened to be living right there at Ground Zero. He was a great father. Never shot a gun before. Crack shot.
Yep.
He knew how to fly a plane for some reason.
Got
He was the
involved with the
only
Israeli
person to
Special
survive
Forces,
a fucking
you know.
plane crash into the woods.
The only
That was
American
absurd.
Israeli
Yeah,
specials.
he's like, and they're like, oh my God, who would possibly go in here to test this vaccine
It must
with
be
the zombies?
Jason
Like,
Bourne.
I'll do it. It was everything about
know
that
what?
was just sucking his dick.
With the way it was shot,
It's
How
it
cho-
was
how
the same
choppy-
fucking
it's a-
movie. It's the
it's a
same
Bourne
goddamn
movie.
And then the zombies move, like they took running zombies to like running zombies is fine. Like I think that's very unnecessary. I enjoy the movie 28 Days Later. 28 Weeks
Yeah.
Later was not as good.
No,
but I enjoyed 28
no.
Days Later. It was a weird amount of like ass and a lot of dick in that for no reason, which I felt. And it's also like that
That
guy.
was around the time they were just
Whole
throwing
lot of
dick
man
into
sausage.
every movie. Like,
Yeah, I don't know why
here's
it was
Watchmen, here's a
unnecessary.
dick.
Like it's fine, I don't care, but like you don't have to force it. That said, I enjoyed the running zombies in that, and like I don't think that Dawn of the Dead, the remake, is as good as the original, but it's a fun movie, and the running zombies isn't the worst part of it.
I
But
agree.
World War Z the film took that to like this point where the zombies were like 7 times as fast.
Yeah, they're all climbing on
Yeah.
top of each other.
Like
Well, that
they're
makes
like climbing
sense, but, like, they
stories
shouldn't be,
tall. It's
yeah.
not a thing.
So I have a little inside baseball about World War Z. So when they made that movie, they had just kind of figured out the tech to get mobs done via
CGI. Like,
So it's like
how
some
they
producer who just did like 7
Star Wars
lines and he's
shit.
like, let's do this.
no, essentially, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It was a showcase of how because before that you could have like 10 CGI people on screen, and then they figured out a means to
that
have
wasn't the
Well, I
movie
wish
to
they
take
hadn't.
you that.
It might have been a better movie.
like listen, they shouldn't have been a movie.
Yeah.
Well, it shouldn't
It was
have been a
that
movie.
of all like what pissed me off about that is that because I did love the book and I love zombie films is that they were doing all those found footage films at the time, still are, but like it was
Yeah.
really at the heyday, and so like this was the perfect book because it was all like found accounts where these people
that
are
is the
detailing
thing
their
in the
stories.
book. It is interstitial. It's broken up
Yeah.
into.
It's like
This was the
Traffic
perfect
or-
time to do that found footage thing. And they're like, you know what? This is the first time in 10 years I don't want to do found
Yeah.
footage. Instead, let's do a bunch of blow and use this random CGI bullshit to make the zombies move like water.
and Brad Pitt just solves everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, that's
Well, that's just how life works, man.
just Brad
Yeah.
Pitt just
Brad Pitt
swoops
just
in.
solves everything.
I'm
Look,
telling you, like literally, it was just a vehicle so they could CGI mobs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous.
All right, so
I still watch it.
So we've kind of gone over these few things, like the crawler thing. It's about speed. It's not so much
It's-
about like, oh,
yeah.
you can move around.
It's
Like you got,
it's like, is it just they have no means and they're like just staggering over themselves, or do they have actual agency
Right, yeah.
in their speed?
And you had crawlers in, at least when you look at those like slow zombie movies, there was always this so-called crawler in
Yeah.
it. It's a big part of the original Dawn of the Dead. I'm hard pressed to think of examples in like
I
the
don't
fast
think they
zombie
were
thing,
moving
but-
that fast, the way that we interpret crawlers to this.
Oh, you're
that-
saying they're like fast crawlers. Yeah.
Yeah,
I can't
they're
think
like
of
fat,
examples like that in the modern
you'd
film
have to
scene,
like
right?
play Resident Evil 2 or
Yeah.
3 again
Yeah.
for an example of that. Because I was thinking, what are they called? The lickers?
The
Because
lickers, yeah.
They can go on the
Right,
ceiling and
yeah.
attack you
Yeah.
from
Yeah,
there.
that's
But then,
kind
like,
of. But I consider that a crawler as well.
Yeah, but it's just like, it's all about speed. So like a licker
Well,
would just be a runner.
And Resident Evil games were basically, they were monster games. They weren't just
Yeah.
zombies.
Yeah.
It took a
Yeah,
big
they were monster
leap.
games, and they dealt with the slow moving as a suspenseful survival aspect.
Yeah,
of
exactly.
The fucking,
Yeah.
Because that game was about management of what you could pick up.
Yeah,
and jump scares.
Because everything turned into a zombie in those games, like dogs, crows, everything caught the virus. So that's another thing we can account for too. It's like, oh, what about animals? Can they turn into zombies?
Fucking alligator.
Too? Yeah, an alligator.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
But we should tag in to the other side. I think we've been going so long on
those
this part of the
goddamn
argument.
pesky robots. They're the ones that implanted this into our minds.
Well, also, I would.
We're
say
worried
real
about
quick,
zombies, and we're
before we drop zombie,
Yeah.
it's kind of all in agreement. If there's a zombie apocalypse, it's pretty easy. What you wouldn't, or not easy necessarily, because you don't know the mass quantity of zombies. But the protocol would just be like, get away from the cities, find a farm, grow crops, get as much guns and bullets and stuff like that as possible. Knives, swords, whatever, axes, whatever you can. If you run out of bullets, and just fortify and do all that. And then...
And don't go to London.
You
You shouldn't go there anyway. It's a terrible place.
And my plan is to
Not
get...
good for the living.
My plan is to get a baseball bat, wrap it in barbed wire, and kill an Asian person, apparently.
I love
Nick
that.
Foley over there in Japan.
It's a Negan reference, but okay.
Oh, all right. I don't know that wrestler.
Surprised that missed you, actually. Yeah.
All right, so let's contrast the zombie apocalypse with a robot uprising, robot apocalypse, machine, whatever. So in most cases, if anything, all cases, any sort of machine uprising, robot apocalypse, however you want to frame it, is AI based. Would you not agree with that?
Almost always.
Yeah,
Almost
it would
always.
have to be.
And the reason that becomes an apocalypse is because it's essentially our own hubris, and this is a comment that somebody said. Zombies are a force of nature, whereas robots, machines, AI...
A penance for our own hubris.
Exactly.
Which is another force of nature because people are part of nature. But I do recognize what's being said there. I would agree. Yeah.
So now we all agree that AI apocalypse, essentially, let's phrase it that way, is the worst possible outcome. But we're
in it.
We're on the early stages of it.
We're in the dawn.
Yeah. Dawn of the machines. I think that's
Ted Kaczynski tried to warn us.
Yeah. But we didn't listen.
He hilariously did.
Hoisted by our own petards.
So when we were talking about zombie apocalypse versus robot apocalypse, I was going off of T3. Not exactly my favorite Terminator movie, but it sets the foundation.
I think it's one of the dregs, but I get you.
Yeah. It's essentially we arm all of our armaments, all of our nuclear weapons, everything
into
that we
the
have.
hands of AI.
Yeah, we put it into the hands of AI because we might have a Joe Biden as president, and maybe he doesn't know what to do at 3 a.m. because he's not on his dementia meds or something.
He's not
It's
good at
so
12
funny
noon.
how art becomes life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we give AI control of everything, and eventually AI, because it's always learning, is like, kind of
People
like,
are lazy.
There's only
The
one
more the
problem here.
machine
It's
can
the
do-
people.
yeah, it's like you mentioned before we started recording. Ultron from Age of Ultron.
That's
second
the
Avengers
his
movie.
whole basis.
Oh,
Like,
the shield for the world.
and it's like, you only need protection from yourselves.
Yeah.
And-
So eventually, AI will probably always come to that answer because
why would it? Like, we've come to that answer, and we've made media of AI doing that to us.
And yet we don't learn. There's a whole series of
really.
movies based on this one idea.
We're just trying to get you used to it.
The thing with call it the AI or robot apocalypse, whatever you want to call it, the thing that fucks me up so much about it is that maybe I can put myself there because at least my death will be probably pretty clean.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I go in the
It would
opposite
be
direction
efficient.
with that.
I hear you.
Well, that's also another thing because somebody brought that up. I don't know why they thought this would be the better AI apocalypse to live through, but the Matrix, where essentially you are the worst battery to ever exist.
Yeah.
You're the whole, you're the cancer that the machines are trying to get rid of.
Yeah, I think that's the dubious part of that because, if you're looking at what in the zombie apocalypse, you become a zombie, and if you watch those old films, I love the end of Day of the Dead.
Of course,
that was so great for the gore. And you're watching people who are getting their abdomens ripped open,
yeah,
and it's like a drawn out scene. But by drawn out scene, we're talking about 30 seconds before you die.
Yeah.
Now they're an agonizing 30 seconds. Don't get me wrong, but if you watch something like The Animatrix, you're talking about people being slowly dissected, so that the machines can learn about the physics of the physicality of human beings, how we could be used in the future, how you can edit a human and things like that. So, I mean, now you're not talking about even necessarily dying on a battlefield or, dying by a machine ripping you apart.
Johnny Mnemonic.
Yeah, right. Well, that wasn't AI. That was just people. I just watched that the other day.
So I'm kind of underselling a robot uprising, because they can just do that. They can make you a shitty battery or dissect
and that's
you
what
like a
that's
frog.
what's dubious about it, because you're not like, when you're talking about zombies, you're not talking about another. I mean, it depends. If you look at Ramiro, he was like, they actually were intelligent, but leave that aside and just go with regular zombies. And now you're left with like, okay, zombies are going to rip you apart and it's going to be terrible, but you're pretty much going to be dead relatively quickly.
They have one goal and you know what it is.
With robots, it's that you really don't know, because it might be like, because you figure that if we're talking about, they refer to it, I think, as a singularity. When humans create an AI that like is self-aware,
it's like a hive mind.
Once it realizes itself.
When it becomes self-aware, that's the singularity, and now it can like learn exponentially and so on and so forth. So I mean, there's really no reason to assume in either direction, but I'll just for the purposes of this conversation, I'll go in that one direction where it's like, there's no reason to assume that like in this robot uprising that they're just gonna be like, let's just kill all the people fast, because the machine might likewise say, well, listen, people are a part of this ecosystem, so we do need to keep them around. So let's round them up.
Saying, but I feel like that's cheating the argument.
I feel like the AI would already know.
I feel like we're saying one's exterminating us or the other's exterminating.
I'm just saying that extermination doesn't need to be quick. Extermination could be very slow with robots.
I hear what you're saying. I just think it's kind of cheating the thing. I mean, then let's go with Dan the Legend's example right here of T3. And in that, there was, if I'm not mistaken, there is an at-length scene where they were rounding people up and putting us into like prisons and such when they had the capacity to have executed it. Or am I thinking of Revelation, Redemption? Are we picking
Salvation?
That's
I'm a lot better with zombie movies than I am with robot ones.
We'll tackle the Terminator series at a different podcast.
That's fair enough. Yeah. Point being is that there is like evading the conversation or evading the argument. I mean, that's fair. I'm just saying the death doesn't need to be quick with robots, because extermination doesn't need to be, I exterminate you right now. Whereas for zombies, it is right now. I want to eat you right now. I'm not going to do anything different. I'm just going to kill you.
But there's also no capability for zombies to upgrade. Zombies are just decaying. They're always dying because they're just
primal need. Primal need.
Machines are always inherently, through the AI, always going to want to upgrade. So even if they just have like the basic like Google machines that you've seen like videos of, they'll make them better and have like lasers on their head in like 15 fucking minutes. Like,
no, you're right. They'll still incinerate all the robots to the left of them. But
that, I guess, then would be with leaving out the methodologies or the motives that robots would have. With the zombie, you know how you're going to die.
Yeah,
you're gonna get.
Yeah, I think that's kind of
there's more
the robot
there.
They could like again. I'll call back to the Animatrix. In that, the fucking robots eventually, they were struggling in their war against humanity. They stopped building just robot tanks,
and they kind of proxied it. It was like fucking weird.
Yeah, they started to use humans. They built humans into other machines. Essentially, they had tentacle robots that rip you apart.
This is a very
it became scarier and scarier.
So it's like we're kind of going between like base instinct, the need to just do whatever a flesh zombie does, the need to just feed, we'll put it that way, or what is the robot? What is that chase?
The robot is only built off of what we created, so it's going to have us
There's your
in
hubris again. Once it's a singularity, then, I mean, you'd still be technically right in that we're all,
it was only born from what we created.
But the singularity can create.
Yeah, it can learn from that, but it's still us at base.
I mean, that's fair enough, but that's like saying that you can't create something, and instead that it's somebody before you that created it.
What would a runaway AI look like?
Yeah.
What would its goals be?
Yeah.
With zombies, we understand that that's base. They're going
to eat you.
It's chase to eat.
No,
they just want to multiply.
What
like
is
any animal?
Yeah. So base level, like a virus.
Yeah.
Its goal is to just spread.
Yes, exactly.
And the robot presumably would have the same concept of dominance, of spreading, of being able to control its environment. So it's at that base, it's the same, but the methodology that it would use.
But also,
that's complex.
If we had to imagine, it would have to be an AI.
Yeah.
So you would have to imagine it be a higher level.
I'll put it to you this way. This is the way that I would look at it. When you watch like classical zombie movies and zombie games, it's the way that we've described it, right? It's that the zombie wants to eat you, and that's the end of it. So I'll go with what you just said, Moses, even though I kind of disagree with elements of it. It's that, okay, so the robot then is mimicking. They're doing more or less what we programmed it to do, and then they're evolving from that point. Okay, so then the robot is like what people are before they become zombies, right? So I would still much rather be murdered by a zombie where we've made that clear cut, because look at what the fuck people do to everything else.
And most
We've
of the
got
time
like
they don't
animals
even
in
mean it.
cages.
I just had a really good chuckle because I just remembered the movie The Virus.
Oh, wow. That's fucking old. Nobody knows what that is. Nobody knows what that is.
I need a clip
I
note
think
on that.
Donald Sutherland, Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah, you're right. Wow, good memory on you. That's an old. That was like what?
Good luck
90?
finding it anywhere to watch.
I'm
They were
trying
on-
to unlock the memory.
They
They
were
were
on-
salvagers.
They were salvagers on a ship,
Yeah.
and then it came from space.
Yes. So it connected to what do you call it? The space station.
Oh yeah.
And then it was a digital life form.
Oh,
That came down.
okay.
And probably one of the last movies that use, because Donald Sutherland, once he gets turned, that's all.
Oh, like prosthetics.
Yeah, prosthetics and stuff. Donald Sutherland is like fully turned into a cyborg, I guess would be the right term.
Basically, the machine was mixing organic.
I
do
and
remember
technology.
It's a
this.
fucking bananas fucking movie. And it gets more bananas, but the scene with Donald Sutherland mixed full cyborg is the most bananas shit I've ever
He's like a T, like Arnold when his like face
like
gets
that,
shot
but
off.
way grosser.
Yeah, way
like,
gross.
more gore,
It's
yeah.
not clean. You're not just like looking at a naked Arnold Schwarzenegger in his prime.
And if I remember
First of all,
correctly,
Sutherland, nobody wanted
and
that.
he's in his 60s.
well, like I think they did it practical.
It was practical effects at
It
the
was
time.
practical
That
effects,
was before they
yeah.
were doing CGI for everything.
And it's like just Donald Sutherland with like 90% of his flesh removed.
I'll say this, and this is like a little bit of a divergence from talking about how gross that scene was, and I do agree.
Yeah.
But on the note of AI and such like that, this never really crossed my mind. But we're talking about like if people create an AI here, and that was a digital life form, which is another way of saying AI.
Yeah.
That's an interesting thought experiment
It is.
there, where another planet creates an AI, right? It wipes them out, and then it comes here, and does that type of shit. Once again, that's the scarier of the thing.
Well, because
give me zombies.
Because that could already be happening.
Yeah.
If I remember the movie properly, like it was like a shockwave that hit.
Yeah, I remember it. Yeah, it was like fucking like Northern Lights kind of.
Yeah,
shit.
it kind of went across and it hit whatever, like some version of the
Aurora
space
Borealis.
station.
It was like Mir at the time or something.
And it got transported down, and that's how it was was why it was called virus.
Yeah,
but like it literally took them as organic material and just like integrated itself into them. It only got bigger from that.
Yeah, it was just intelligent.
Well, that was what the
and knew how
blob
to-
was. It was
The blob was not
no,
that.
no.
it was just a meteor coming down and
The blob had no sentience.
Yeah.
In a way that like changed.
That was like an amoeba like thing,
Yeah.
or like it just grew. I mean, you could make arguments there, but I know it's not the argument that you're making, Moses.
yeah, that was a thing. He knew what he was doing. He was eating.
Bringing this.
You didn't feel for the blob.
Yeah.
I mean, on rewatches, I did.
Bringing this back.
Yeah.
One of the other comments we got about the robot apocalypse, machine uprising, what have you, is using EMPs to disable it because, if you do that, you'll fry everything.
Right.
Now, this isn't very practical in our situation, this T3 situation, because if we have
They would
armed
never be able to
everything,
hear us.
we would never be able to fire an EMP. And also,
The thing is, do any of you understand how much power is necessary to throw off an EMP?
Yeah, they made during the Cold War. I know they made a variety of different
you
nuclear
get EMP
weapons.
They tried,
by
making
proxy.
shotguns of
Yeah,
it.
yeah. You can. They made various different types of nuclear devices that had minimal. What would you call it? Like thermal yield.
Yes.
So not what people think of, where it's like it's not the giant fireball.
You're not
No.
burning.
And instead, it's got a small fireball because it's still a nuke.
Yeah.
But it's mostly that electromagnetic
Yes,
pulse.
exactly.
So I mean, like it can be done, but
A purpose-built EMP is so energy intensive.
Yeah.
It's
And
insane.
you fry everything of your own. So I mean, even hypothetically, if you have like, let's say there's a robot.
no,
army,
it's
right?
all or nothing.
Yeah, you're only doing this once.
Yeah. And like if it's like a robot army right here, so you detonate one right there. If you had another EMP nearby, now that won't work either.
No,
You have to do
it's
them
the
all
sample
at the
itself.
same.
Also, they there is like types. I don't understand how it works because I'm not smart enough, but I know that there are like ways that they shield very sensitive like military
they
sites and
can,
stuff
but
against that because obviously the military,
But it's bananas. It's so cost ineffective to do this type of shielding because you're essentially doing like an inverse. You're kind of like reverse polarity things.
Yeah.
The whole EMP thing drives me insane.
It's not
like,
just like a cure-all for
no.
that.
it's
EMP is a result of something that you did to not create an EMP. If you want to purpose build an EMP, it is so cost ineffective aside from solar flares or solar energy.
If you feel like you need to build an EMP, then just don't make AI.
Yeah.
And you just saved a whole lot of money.
That's the easier solution. Again, as I said, like it's when you're already in it, like let's say like that first 48 hours, like we were talking about with like the zombie
there's
apocalypse.
only one.
You're never going to be able to do that because now you don't know what's happening.
Right.
And then by the time you get any sort of control back, you don't have access to your EMPs anymore.
AI singularity happens.
Yeah.
You're fucked.
Yeah.
You're fucked.
I thought that was actually, like, as silly as, like, the Terminator series is, and I very much enjoy it, the first two films.
Let's definitely quantify that.
I thought that, and even in, like, some of the later films where they touched upon it, like, these parts of the films were good.
Yeah.
But it's that in those first 48 hours, which was depicted in at least one of those films, it shows you that the AI wasn't, like, human-looking robots. It wasn't, and that's presumably how that would unfold. It would be that this thing that you've created becomes self-aware, and then it takes control of just what already exists.
Yep.
It doesn't have factories to build
what it
sweet
has its
cyborgs
tendrils
and shit.
into.
So then it like launches your nukes and wipes out a whole bunch of you. So now it's bought itself a shit ton of time because your society's collapsed. And now in that time period, it can like try and get certain factories online and whatnot. And it uses, drones that exist. Obviously not today because we wouldn't program machines to be able to kill people. But
never.
hypothetically, it would take over drones. Am I making that word up, Dan? Either way.
I think you're on to something.
I might be, yeah. They don't call me Isaac Asimov for nothing.
And it's like, I've always gone back and forth on this. And it's so funny because, like, it's almost between clean and dirty.
It's essentially the way that I was phrasing it when we were talking about this. It's combating a virus, which is the zombie thing, and fighting a fucking war.
Yeah.
You're fighting a war against the AI will have something. It's going to use your own shit against
It'll
you.
be some sort of proxy against you.
And then when it can build its own stuff, like a hypothetical
and when you get fucking killed by your fucking air fryer, good on you.
We had the best.
That reminds me of the movie
man.
The Ghost in the Machine, if anybody ever...
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
That's an old movie. That was like in that it was that was particularly.
Well, you're also treading in a couple because it is an old movie. It's also a very popular manga.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So that's actually very good.
Yeah.
Ghost in the Machine is
The
phenomenal.
original.
I was talking about the shitty.
Let's never talk about that. What's her Johansson?
Oh yeah,
That was
that
Ghost in the
terrible.
Shell.
Yeah.
Oh, Ghost in the Shell.
Ghost in the Shell. Yeah. Ghost in the Machine was great. Though.
Ghost in the Machine was a movie.
The film that I was referencing, it's like I think it's like a late 1980s, early 1990s, but it's like a serial killer that gets electrocuted, and he's somehow
Fuck you all, Lawnmower Man.
Right?
Oh,
yeah. Holy shit.
Yeah, that's right.
So I want to go through some of these. So we have this from Keen Emperor 1191.
Hello, Keen.
Robot apocalypse because you can create an underground bunker and on top electrified water pool that will disable ground force and a battery operated scrambler.
That's interesting.
This is very in depth.
On you at all time, then you'll be invisible at all times.
But wouldn't
All
they?
right, listen, as a failed electrical engineer, I am very interested in what you're saying. What's your power source?
Yes.
Yeah.
Especially in
and
an
why wouldn't the
apocalypse
machines
situation.
just like think of a way around that? In other words,
That's a
there's
good
no such thing
homing
as a perfect
signal
defense or
because
a
they could
perfect.
just sense for that big.
I like your thought. I really like your thought, but like multiple aspects there.
Yeah.
What's your power source to maintain that? Also, it might just be a fucking red flag.
In a zombie apocalypse,
Yeah.
I can cover myself in guts
Yeah.
and then just wander around, and I'm invisible.
So they say.
I'm willing to test this out. You know what,
Might as
Moses?
well.
Release
Like,
the
what's the
plague.
worst that's gonna
Release
happen?
the plague. I've grown weary of living.
This is from random user TU2HJ.
That sounds like
Wow,
a Russian
fuck
bot.
you.
That old
I-
asshole.
Yeah.
This is in the 80s. The robots now are the size of a $1 coin. $1 coin.
Wow.
I mean, those are
I'm
they're
already
Sacagawea
confused.
coins, Dan. Where have you been?
That can fly and explode next to your head.
So they're talking about drones.
Yeah.
They're bigger than that, but all right.
I mean,
No, we're talking about Iron Man, like pew pew things.
yeah.
I mean, that is fair, though, because, like, we are talking about, like, Terminators and shit.
So
and in
why isn't
reality,
any
you would
of
just
this
make a bunch of
possible?
tiny little fucking drones
Yeah.
and just, like, pilot them over towards people.
Like,
I
they're-
guess then the Scrambler thing might work, because, like, that what do they call it? Fucking, oh, God damn it. Electronic warfare.
Well,
That's like a real
So
thing,
the biggest thing was, say, like drones.
Yeah.
The only failsafe you can do is direct signal interference.
Right, yeah, exactly.
That's why they have these big fucking shoulder mounted thing.
Yeah.
It just drowns out all signal.
Exactly, yeah.
And it's not good, and it's not 100% effective.
The machines will build it better, though. Don't worry.
So, having talked about all of this, guys, our presupposition going into this podcast was that we would pick the zombie apocalypse.
Yeah.
I don't think at any point we've really talked ourselves out of that presupposition.
No. I still very firmly stand where I think I stood before.
So let me ask you guys, is there a way to make a zombie apocalypse that is worse than a AI machine robot apocalypse? Like, because we've already kind of covered a lot of ground with the zombie apocalypse in terms of
zombie robots.
Like, what, are the robots just decaying? How is it a zombie?
No, I think that the thing that is scary, and we kind of touched upon it before, is that what's scary about the zombie apocalypse is not that it wipes out everybody.
Yeah.
It's that the people who are left have to face these other ravenous people.
Yeah.
And in the same way as I find the robots scary, and I related it to that, people are awful, and do terrible things in warfare, so on and so forth, animal laboratories, etc. That's how I imagine that this robot apocalypse would look, hypothetically. I think that when you look at a zombie apocalypse, it's not looking at the zombies, it's looking at what these people are doing that you're going to run into. I think it's a classic apocalyptic story.
Oh, how they're reacting to it.
How you're going to, basically, okay, so you survived the zombie apocalypse, and I think that's like the best case scenario that I'm like imagining. So let's get past like that your guts get ripped out, and instead you made it, and you're in your underground bunker, and now you're there with these other people, and you have to interact with them as there's no hope.
The thesis of that being that a zombie apocalypse creates desperation.
Yeah.
Yes.
Whereas the machine apocalypse will actually create unity because in my own...
Well said.
When I was thinking about this, a zombie apocalypse, I think at best, maybe this is lowballing it. You guys can tell me if I'm off base here. Decimation, 10% of the population. Gone.
Yeah.
Easily, yeah.
I think because you don't get to really, because when it comes down to a personal level, you don't get to assign an other to a zombie because it's so personal.
Yeah, because
everybody's losing somebody to them.
Yeah. With the machine uprising, I'm thinking it's above 75% of the human population is done.
Yeah.
Just because you're just all the nuclear weapons, everything that we've ever created turned against us. The reason it creates the desperation is because we still have hope. And hope will create that desperation. Whereas with the machine uprising, we don't have that hope. And there's only so many of us left. No. So that's why we actually have to band together.
I know that you want to quote Shawshank Redemption right now, Moses. I know it's killing you inside.
He's fighting his time
bounced off my brain right now. But I feel like it's going to come in the form of...
dangerous thing.
All the Furbies are going to awaken in the fucking various...
That's why they were put out.
Yeah. Just their shells, their eyeballs, and they're just going to start collecting flesh on themselves.
Yeah, I can see that actually. That's pretty terrifying.
That is. Like they just...
If you really visualize it.
My sister, she's 7 years younger than me. She had a Furby.
Amanda did too, yeah.
And my brother and I had to kill it. And we didn't do a good enough job killing it.
You can't kill a Furby.
And we skinned that fucker until it was just robotics parts.
And you just throw it out.
We should have.
That's
we
the
threw
best
it
you
into
can
the
do.
darkest corner of her closet, and it just haunted her. I've only found this out afterwards for years.
I feel like that's one of those things where like eventually it did get thrown away, and it's like one of those 80s movies where like a garbage man finds it.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh man,
like a big
my friend Leroy's daughter would love this. And then it goes on to kill.
It's like a monkey's paw.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah, it's like a progenitor to like Five Nights at Freddy's or whatever.
Yeah. Well, what do you guys think in terms of, I threw out the number 10, at least 10% of the population in a zombie apocalypse.
Yeah, in a zombie apocalypse, yeah. I mean, basically what you're looking at with that is the reaction time and the speed at which it travels. So if you're looking at 28 days later, it was like, they don't really tell you. It's implied in some ways that it's just the UK, but then in 28 weeks later, it's made it everywhere else. So it's really about reaction time and things like that. If you're talking about a robot apocalypse, you're certainly talking about nuclear weapons.
Yes.
In which case, you've wiped out the vast majority of the planet and most animal life as well, because it's a nuclear winter.
I am inclined to agree, because I believe, say, like a robot apocalypse, say like an AI type thing, they're going to use the most powerful things against us, immediately wipe us out.
You know
what?
I want to chime in with something that I feel like is often left out of these apocalyptic arguments. Nuclear power plants. They need to be constantly maintained.
Oh no,
otherwise
they're
they melt
immediate.
down.
They overheat. They turn into.
That's actually something that as I've mentioned, I love the original Dawn of the Dead. People don't really like, you know, not that I'm some sort of a fucking expert, but obviously your average person doesn't really think about nuclear power on their given day.
No, they just go to. I mean, they could do nothing and they just go into runaway.
Yeah, it's like I think that came out in 1978, maybe.
Yeah.
But either way, certainly back then people knew even less. And in that, when they go to the mall,
about 20 years into, 15 years into,
and the girl says to Peter, she's like, you know, how's the power still on here? And Peter says, it's probably nuclear.
That's
right?
also not
and
how
I like hate
works,
that
but
response because it implies that like yes, it can run forever. You don't need to keep supplying it with a thing, but it requires people to run it.
Well,
and
that's
water.
the thing. It would go into full runaway and destroy every mechanism to
and now
actually
you've
supplying
got every
power.
nuclear power plant in the world melting down because you need all of the infrastructure.
Hold
that goes
on
into
there.
it.
Is that not necessarily the case where the AI would take control of the nuclear power plants?
Well, presumably they would be able to. You say I don't know enough about.
Or
like, how
would they
those
let?
are
But
operating.
also, would they let it run away, or would they want to collect power?
Right, yeah,
Well,
exactly.
they would. They would still need a power source.
Yeah.
They're still machines. It's still an AI. You can't kill the power grid. You need that. Otherwise,
Factories
you
have
die.
to run off of these systems. Batteries have to be recharged.
Yeah.
Well, all that I was saying is that in the zombie scenario, you still have
If we go into
type
runaway.
of nuclear winter.
Essentially, guaranteed run into nuclear winter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Every power plant in the world that ran off of that type
We
of
would
power
starve
melt down.
just by ex de facto starve out the sun from non-maintenance on.
Oh yeah, what do the robots run off of? Though?
Yeah.
Because if you look at, I mean, we'll leave the Matrix aside because that argument made no
Oh,
sense.
yeah.
But with everything else, like all
Kilowatts
of
don't
these other,
work that way.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that was one of the dumbest things.
Yeah. But again, people don't know that.
Yeah,
so. You can't get more power out of a thing than you put in.
What is also interesting too, because one of the most fortified places to ever fucking try to break into is a nuclear power plant. So that you would presume that would be like they would run out of food before they'd run out of
Also,
rights.
But what they
Fukushima
need,
happened.
they have to be able. A nuclear power plant can't run its own power generation, so it has to. It needs all
Fukushima
of these other
failed
systems
because it lost power.
Yeah.
That is confusing.
Yeah.
That's how it works. Yeah.
Not running off its own nuclear power.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. But that's
You
the
can't
thing,
have
yeah.
a self-sustaining economy of power.
They're called bar bucks, Dan.
Yeah. But yeah, even
we'll
if those
make it
people,
work.
and I would agree with you, presumably that would be one of the those would be the last places, because they tend to be like, fortified, isolated, a lot of fences in between.
Snipers
you and
out the Yahoo.
zombies, yeah. But they're still going to melt down.
Yeah, they'll melt down eventually. So you have that going in the zombie.
You would
apocalypse.
have weeks at most, I think.
So does that change your opinion then? Because you would presumably
That's a good question.
In an AI apocalypse, you'll have the nuclear power plants because the AI presumably would know like we can't lose power to this because it damages us.
Yeah.
The zombies don't have a
Here-
thought
all right,
process.
so
Are
here's the
zombies
thing.
susceptible to that?
They're susceptible to dying.
I would say zombies are zombies are dumb. Like they're not higher thinking.
Yeah.
I would say AI is self-preserving.
Yeah.
It would want to preserve
Yeah.
and it would do what it needs to do for self-survival.
Yeah. Well, that's like when you look at least some of these robot apocalypse kind of scenarios. It's that it happens once we've already reached a point that you've built, like for example, a drone that has a solar
they always
panel
call
on
it the
its
singularity
back.
moment.
Because that's obviously like if we could build a drone right now that could just recharge itself, you think that people wouldn't?
Yeah.
We'd
Lord
be
knows
all
we're
about
trying.
that, and that's kind of like that. That's the concept that precedes it.
There's still people staring at Nikola Tesla's drawings.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's the same concept. So I think that when you're talking about the robot apocalypse, it kind of like assumes that it would happen after that type of thing had occurred, where you've built individual robots, individual
Or
machines.
somebody cracked
that
the
are-
code.
Well, I don't know what code that was.
I
They
feel
cracked the code
like
to like make an AI drone.
I feel like
they're kind of right there.
zombies is base needs. They chew through their whatever.
Yeah.
Their food seems pretty base. I think an AI takeover is a higher.
Yeah.
It's not to destroy you, it's to take over all these things, and then slowly eliminate all this.
Also, something that people don't talk about with the zombie thing, and this was always my plan for when this inevitably occurs.
We finally find out.
In the zombie apocalypse, you go to an environment where it's frozen most of the time, a very cold environment.
That is a trope.
Because the bottom line is that, whether you're a zombie or
it slows down metabolic behavior.
Yeah, your blood will freeze. It is still mostly water, so you will freeze, you will slow down, which means that if you're living, in fucking Canada,
and
you've got 6 months out of the year where you don't have to worry about zombies.
If we're dealing with zombies that don't give a shit, they don't have higher brain function. Yeah. They're just functioning in how they are. The thought is that, their bodies, if you're not protecting, because they're obviously not thinking about protecting their bodies.
Yeah, they're not putting on winter coats.
The bodies will fail.
Cold.
But then
fail.
But then you run into the situation too. Let's say you go up to Edmonton. Yeah. You're like, oh, you're good here. Food.
Yeah,
you're gonna have to farm.
You are absolutely right. I'm just saying you got to go to the far fringes of.
What happens when everybody's a zombie? What does it just die out?
Then?
Well, then you don't have to worry about that question.
Well, as a zombie, I will.
No, you will not.
As a zombie, you will have no worries.
I might have.
Honestly, if you've been looking for that easy living, Moses,
sign yourself up.
I've already been doing it.
Bahama, pretty much.
There it is. Yeah.
Got John Stamos in my Foot Locker.
Yeah.
You're just reviewing the fucking troll dolls. Fucking in your head.
That is actually pretty funny. Do you actually have a thought process if you're a zombie? You're just the last thought you had before you died. Let's say it's the last song. It's just stuck in your head forever.
Oh, it's so unfortunate because for some dumb fucks, it's fucking Blippy.
I feel like Moses' last thought as he slipped into zombieism would be like, man, who am I going to eat?
Yeah, I got the munchies.
And it's just him. He's just back.
Yeah.
Pops an edible and slips into the ether.
Yeah. He just
starts eating
actively, peacefully coexists amongst the zombies.
We have the same thing in common. We're hungry.
I like the idea that you wake back up as a zombie and all of a sudden you can't get Ace of Base out of your head.
That's why they're so angry and eating people.
I just want this to end. Yeah. Please have a gun.
I walked out of the office today and down to where all the trucks are, and somebody was playing Days of the New, and I had a similar fucking situation. Yeah. I thought I traveled in time for a minute.
I can only hope it's a Ninja Sex Party song.
Yeah. Amen, brother. Amen.
So we kind of went over this again, but our presuppositions have not really changed.
No,
I would still rather. Yeah. You did the nuclear power plant thing to me kind of throws a different.
No, that is good. It's very good.
It won't happen in that one.
But I think that would raise my death toll because even if all of the nuclear power plants melted down, I still think that only takes out maybe a 25%, maybe going up to 50%.
You're absolutely right. The thing is that it's constant feed over time.
Yes. Yeah. But also at the same time,
it renders parts of the world uninhabitable.
Where's how much is the radioactive,
material? Yeah, because if you were looking like in that scenario, it becomes much more regional. Though it would too with nuclear weapons being fired by robots and such. Because you would figure that South America, Africa, basically the southern hemisphere would be largely immune to that.
Yes.
But the northern hemisphere would be totally fucked.
Yeah.
Oh no! Yeah. That's wasteland forever.
Yeah, Japan would just be absolutely
gone. It'd be done. Yeah.
I mean, you're absolutely, but
the fact that it's.
But France would be gone, so that's nice. They've got a lot of nuclear power plants there.
Yeah.
Silver linings.
Well, they're trying to close them all down, right?
No, that's Germany. France is doubling down on that shit.
The French are cons.
Yeah.
Well, I hope we answered most of your questions
about the French.
If you were wondering about the French, I think we got it.
Have you not seen the new?
No. Also, at the end of 28 weeks later, that's where the zombies got to. It was them invading Paris, actually.
Yes, strap in for the new movie 28 years later, which is coming.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Did we skip past months?
It was supposed to be months, and then, I don't know, it's been in limbo for a long time. The second movie was not great. So.
Because it was 28
weeks. I thought there was a month.
Oh, no, it was 28 days. 28 days.
Well, there was 28 days, 28 weeks, and then it was supposed to be months, and then it was canceled, and then they started talking about years. And
they didn't do the 28 months later?
No, there's been 2
years. 2 movies.
I thought there were 3.
2 movies.
Well, we hope we answered your questions about the
Answered
zombie
mine.
apocalypse and the robot apocalypse, what have you. We really haven't changed our minds, though. I would still take the zombie apocalypse. Just
I want to hear their rebuttals.
Yeah.
I'm happy to get into this with people.
We have the text, and someday we'll do this where you can call in, you dumb fucks.
Yeah.
I've seen this man talk about Prometheus with a homeless man for
that was great.
Half hour.
I
at
was
least.
very drunk.
We are not talking about that. We are in our exit.
Yeah, save that for another podcast. And speaking of another podcast, make sure that you subscribe so you can catch that next podcast. Leave us a 5-star review. Check us out on YouTube and Rumble. Make sure that you like, comment, share, and if you're on YouTube, hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of our content. Follow us on social media. We are at Loud and Drunk on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok.
Yes, please. Anything, wherever you are listening to this, please, the easiest thing you can do, and it seems incredibly trivial, give us, if you like this, give us a 5-star review. It actually really helps us out a lot on all platforms. And if you actually really care and you like what we do, go to patreon.com/loudanddrunk. You can't search us. We're a little too R-rated for that. But patreon.com/loudanddrunk. Come visit us. Check out what we're doing. And if you like what we're doing, just give us a little bit of support. And it'll only make it better for what's coming in the future.
Hashtag get Dan paid.
Ultimately, yes.
When hell is full, Loud and Drunk will walk the earth.
I have heard that.
Yeah.
We also have a home base, and we want you to make that your home base as well. Loudanddrunk.com. Catch up on the podcast. We got merch, and we're going to be adding more features as we go along, so bookmark that today. So, for Justin, Moses, and Isaac Asimov, I'm Dan, and until next time, fuck y'all.
Fuck y'all.
That's fair.
And very well done with that.